Hello and welcome to the second Samsung Soul for Tomorrow Future Talk. Our theme for tonight is designing a sustainable future. Our mission here at Samsung is to empower future generations to pioneer positive social change and build a better world for us all. I'm Taz, this is Reuben, and behind you, beaming in all the way from Cyprus, is Andriana. We're your mentors, and we'll also be hosting you for tonight.
Just in case you don't already know about us, let me make a head start with introducing Taz. Taz is a passionate,
This is the beauty of life.
Definitely passionate.
No, she had to take a pause just to let that sink in.
I had that lag thing happening with having the live stream on my laptop at the same time. So I was like, wait, let me sort this out now that it's too early. Yes, Taz is definitely passionate about social justice through alternative education. And she's a global diversity, inclusion, and equity leader. And if Taz was an object, she would be a lunchbox. Yes, a lunchbox. Why? Because as soon as she opens up, she's nurturing like a family, and she breeds community at every corner. And she brings all of the sweetness and care and gentleness. And there's no way of escaping knowing the origin with Taz. So you're gonna know where each material comes from and why we have to respect it and what kind of culture we have to deal with behind it.
You know what? I could actually go on longer about Taz, but I'm not going to do that. I mean, if I was on a desert island, I would bring a couple of Tazes, to be honest. So the love goes.
I don't know how to feel about that,
Yeah,
but I'll take it. Thanks,
take,
Andriana.
Take the compliment. Take the compliment and sit with it. All right, let me do the same for Andriana, who's on screen right now. So I'd say Andriana is a political creative director on a mission to communicate ethics in a visual and stimulating way. If she was an object, wait for it, I'd say she's a compassionate, heart-led bulldozer. And I've literally put bulldozer in bold
so
here.
accurate, so accurate.
So she'll be slowly but steadily using her strength, skills, and vision to move communities further towards connectedness and designing the future they actually want, not the one they think is available. Because a lot of time we're limited with that thinking. So I'd say overall, she's unapologetically authentic in a sensitively critical way.
How do you feel, Andriana?
Yeah, look at her shaking her head.
I mean, Reuben knows my purpose way too well as a designer, so there's nothing more to add to that. I feel so seen.
We see you, Andriana, we see you. And finally, let me introduce Reuben. So Reuben frames himself as an edutainer. So he works at the intersect of education and entertainment. He's a comic and creative confidence coach. And he founded something called Dream Rehab to really ignite creativity and curiosity. If I could describe Reuben as an object, I would say he's a giant oak tree with a red squeaky nose. Not sure how you feel about that. Holding a microphone. And the reason I say that is because he's wise. You know, he bears the fruits of his labor. He brings shade and comfort to those around him, but would probably crack a joke every time you walk past the tree and like squeak his nose. But overall, Reuben's an incredible empath who's driven by social change, like many of you tonight. So that's Reuben.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. I'm going to get Taz, you know. Taz is her name, not Kaz.
Cool, we can
to
get
actually do my PR. All right. So that's us. We're the mentors. We'll be taking you through this evening. But a bit more about Samsung Soul for Tomorrow. So the Soul for Tomorrow competition launched at the end of last year, giving young people all across the country opportunities to kickstart their tech for good ideas to solve issues they care about, really pressing issues that they deeply care about. Our winner last year was Alec Conway, and that was announced last month. And we're super excited to see his idea come to life over the next 6 months with long-term mentorship, and support from Samsung and our partners. But things are kind of changing this year. So Samsung Soul for Tomorrow is actually expanding. So it's a year-round celebration of talks, online courses, workshops, and it all ends in our second competition. And us mentors are here to help you build the confidence, connections, and skills to take action and change the world for the better. And the beautiful thing about this journey is that you don't need any qualifications whatsoever, just intent to make the world better.
That's my favorite part by far.
just in 10. And this evening's Future Talk is the second of a 4-part talk series. Tonight is an opportunity like no other, and it's a chance to explore how you can play a part in designing a sustainable future by using the tool of technology to help you, and to figure out how can you start today to move in ways that relieve and honor the majesty of the planet rather than keep on investing in the atrocities that we see happening to it daily. And in order to do so, we've put together a set of people for you who are already in the arena fighting head to head to tackle climate change. And firstly, we have our sustainability ambassador, George Lamb. And then we have our 3 expert guests, Dominique Palmer, who's a climate justice activist, Dwayne Fields, who's an adventurer, explorer, and educator. And we have Joycelyn Longdon, who is the founder of Climate in Color and Sustainability PhD student. Our experts today were chosen each to represent a different role out of the following: the critic, the builder, and the dreamer. The critic is someone who is fully aware of what's happening on the ground today and is up to date with the stats and current events and is head-on advocating, influencing, and speaking up for the ethics that they can't just leave be. And then the builder is someone who's taken up the challenge to build a new framework for us to exist in that didn't exist before, in order to suggest and implement an alternative reality that is more honorable for our planet. And then the dreamer is what we call a visionary. It's the person who takes what exists now, thinks about it, conceptualizes, stretches, and deconstructs, and envisions how life could be in a reality that shouldn't be considered as far-fetched, but more like a reference point of what we should be designing for in the future.
Thanks, Andriana. I love the way you broke that down. So tonight we're hearing from a critic, a builder, and a dreamer. If you are watching tonight, you've got front row access to the people transforming the future of sustainability and an opportunity to ask them your questions live via our Discord community. Andriana, tell us some more about Discord.
So our Discord community, which is already up and running, and tonight specifically on the hashtag sustainability channel, is there for us to discuss whilst the experts are having their talk and giving us all the keys to what they're working on. We're in the Discord community, in the chat, having a conversation about trying to understand what the experts are saying, but also bring up what is really necessary for us, for everyone's point of view. And myself, I'll be there for the whole night, collecting all the questions so we can bring them together and give them to the experts for the Q&A by the end, the final part of the event tonight. And we already have some action going on our Discord channel today. So if you're not already on there, join the conversation and jump in, connect with us, and let us know your thoughts on sustainability and where you're at with it.
No doubt, holding a fort down on Discord. Now, we're going to move on, people. So shortly, we're going to be welcoming our ambassador. We're going to hear from our 3 expert guests and get their unique perspectives on the theme tonight. So don't forget, like Andriana said, keep those questions flowing on Discord. We'll be talking very briefly with each expert after their talk, and then we're going to bring them again on the panel later on for a Q&A. So get the questions down.
Great. So,
okay, it looks like it's time to welcome our first guest. With great pleasure, I'd like to introduce George Lamb. I mean, most of us are going to know him, but for those that don't, he's a presenter, music manager, and he's the founder of Grow. From yoga to farming, philosophical thinking to boxing, Grow gives young people the knowledge, skills, and confidence to think beyond their day-to-day routines and get a more hands-on relationship with nature. He is also an advisor to the Southwark Legends Youth Basketball Academy, based at the Damilola Taylor Centre in Peckham, and it keeps going, man.
So much.
He's done bits.
Keep going, Reuben, keep going.
Yeah, he's a co-founder of Wild Farmed, which is a regenerative farming business that brings the concept of rewilding to farming. There's a lot to learn from George tonight. So without any further ado, let's bring on George then.
Thank you.
Hi, George.
Now I'm quite old. It turns out when you do the resume, there's a lot on there, basically.
Yeah, how does it feel? Do you ever sit there like feeling awkward, like they're just reeling off all these accolades?
It's I don't know. It feels a lot nicer now. I was just saying to the guys on the side, I spent my career, most of my professional career, doing stuff that I didn't, it was fun and entertaining, but I didn't really care about it. And I just had this kind of funny moment just then, stood on the side where I was like, wow, because I feel
Hearing
slightly
it
different.
back.
I'm like, actually, I'm doing something I really care about tonight. So it's great.
Hearing it back is always different. I don't know about you. Like hearing someone describe your work is also very different.
Yeah,
so.
when you do a lot, sometimes you seldom stop to take stock. So sometimes like hearing it back is for me anyway, it's super helpful.
Likewise.
Good to have you, George. I guess our first question is thinking about how you've harnessed like the power of technology in the work that you do in any form. It would be really good to hear.
Certainly. So technology, like central to technology is communication. And everything spirals out of communication. If we don't have good communication, then nothing's going to happen and nothing's going to change. And frankly, we have a monumental task on our hands if we're going to turn the planet around, basically. And so, for me, on a day-to-day, even to be able to, our project, so I started Grow 2 years ago. We're piloting up at a big secondary school in North London. Most people, most people are not going to come to Barnet. They're not going to see what we're doing without the technology of, without social media, without phones, without us having a platform to share what we're doing. Then we'd be another. It wouldn't mean we. I don't want to devalue it, but like we'd just be a small project in a province, basically. And actually, what we're being able to do now is talk to the world and start connecting. And regularly we have people communicating with us from all over the place saying that they're doing something similar or they'd like to be doing something similar. So for me, there is no change, there is no innovation without technology.
Plans for global reach, global domination?
I feel like I'm more into like decentralized autonomous communities really, but
me and Reuben hear that so much.
We can go in on that for a long time.
So if we could model something that people are interested in and then maybe open source it so that they can run with it and get that network effect, then great. All I'm trying to do is just keep modeling stuff and then hopefully people will pick it up and take it and run with it. You mentioned I'm involved with I've been involved with the regenerative farming business for the last 6 or 7 years, which is really, I suppose, that's the genesis for me in connecting with nature. My pal had been a very successful DJ and musician, and he was coming home from a gig, and he read this article that said if we didn't radically change our relationship with the natural world, we were finished. And he was like, oh, God, right, I've got 2 young kids. Maybe I'll see if I can do something about this. Cut to, he sold his publishing rights to his band, and he bought a 100-hectare farm. And when I met him, he was still going to Ibiza to do these kind of to do DJ gigs to hustle up some money to pay for the mistakes he was making on the farm. But I wasn't aware of any of this. And so when I met him, I was about to launch. We were at a party. I was going to launch into some kind of dance music stuff. And he was. I said, "What are you up to?" And he said, "I just sold my publishing rights and I bought this 100-hectare farm." And I was like, "What?" And so began my kind of journey into that world. And so the reason I brought this up, is because what he's been doing is developing a methodology, a way you can farm, which is not only good for human beings and packed, the food's packed full of nutrition, but also you're harnessing loads of CO2 into the ground and therefore lots of fertility. So it's good for us and good for the planet. And the whole point of what we're trying to do is creating an open source plan so that we can get farmers all out. He's a clever guy, but imagine if we had 1,000 Andys figuring it out, or 5,000 or 50,000. Like things can move exponentially with technology. So,
love that accessibility of everything is really important.
And did you say his name was Andy?
Andy,
your friend.
Yeah,
I mean, that's great to hear that the adults are moving this thing forward, especially people that have access and have a bit of money and they got talent and then putting it all back in. But I'm going to flip it just a second. Like, I went on a Grow Instagram, like I told you before we actually went live. Like, I was totally blown away by some of the projects that's going on and just watching the young people carry out some of the tasks and whatnot, just seeing how connected they are. There's so much more to them than just literally growing food. So I think, what can we learn from growing our own food collectively as a community, regardless of our age?
Yeah, so, our biggest issue that we all face is climate change, and it's a very complex issue. But I personally believe that the solution is quite simple, and that's food. And if we fix food, we fix the planet, basically. And I think that's our starting point. And I think the biggest kind of myth we've ever told ourselves is that we're separate from nature. And so whilst we're still running that whole narrative, then nothing's really going to change because we're going to be in war with something that we can't defeat, basically. And so I feel that the reason I started growing, I wasn't, my mum was, ironically, is a gardener, and I'd done the usual thing of just shunning what my mum was into, and it's not for me, and I'd been doing lots of community work. You talked about the Southwark Legends guys down at Damalola Taylor Centre, and I've been doing lots of work with Kids Company and various other organisations, but always looking at it through a kind of socioeconomic, kind of human perspective. And I realised after reading this book called How Soon Is Now that if we didn't start looking after the planet, then everything else is arbitrary, basically. And that's why I started Grow. So for me, the genesis of it all is getting your hands in the dirt, and then we'll take it from there, basically.
I have to say, Reuben, I recently just took the first few chilies off my chili plant, and it just tastes different. I can't explain the pleasure that you get out of growing something from scratch.
Yeah, I helped Taz with her garden, so
yeah, you did as well.
50%.
Yeah, Reuben was in my garden. One more question for you, George. I guess, what's the one thing, because sometimes being a change maker can feel like quite an overwhelming thing, right? There's probably people watching at home, seeing your success, and sometimes we talk about imposter syndrome within communities as well. But what's one small thing that everyone can start doing to show more compassion to the planet?
If you're lucky, you get 3 opportunities a day to shape the future of the planet, basically, and that's every time you eat food. So you can decide where your money goes and what farming system you want to support, and you can decide whether you want to support one which unfortunately is polluting the planet and ultimately will be polluting you, or you can decide if you want to support one that's going to lead to a healthy planet, and your well-being and its well-being are intrinsically linked, so it's win-win.
Our relationship with food, that's the takeaway for me.
3 chances a day, that's really landed, that's really great, man.
So deep. Thanks so much, George. It's been really good to speak to you.
Thank you very much.
It is now time to hear from our first expert, climate justice activist Dominique Palmer. Dominique will play the role of the critic, as Andriana mentioned earlier. And the aim of our critic is to set the scene and help us understand the current situation, what effect this is having and will have on future generations by drawing on her experience. And she'll provide a critique of sustainability in the UK. Dominique is an organizer within Fridays for Future International. She works on climate strikes and actions, mobilization, engaging in policy change with policymakers and various international campaigns. It is my pleasure to welcome Dominique.
Hi everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Dominique, and I'm a climate justice activist. Another world is possible, so let's make it happen. Today I'm going to be talking to you about a sustainable future and climate justice, how this links into all of that, and also how you fit into all of this. And this will be coming from the perspective of a student and a climate justice activist who one day just decided to stand up and fight for this planet. To me, a sustainable world is one in which the protection of the planet and people's well-being is prioritized, where all have access to clean air, water, and green spaces, where consumption and production is reduced, where our natural resources are not exploited, and a future which is equitable. It is also one in which communities feel empowered and where their voices are heard to ensure accountability. Sustainability also means a shift in how we treat the planet, which will require societal change on all levels. It can seem overwhelming because it intersects into so many different issues, but it can be broken down into different sections, from local to global. Think about it like a big puzzle, and all of us are part of those different little pieces. To safeguard the future of this planet, we need to understand why sustainability is crucial, how that links into climate and environmental justice and different issues, and how we actually get there. which includes you. One idea, one action can cause and create a ripple effect to enact change. A few weeks ago, I was a panelist for a youth and ocean conference, and in the live chat, this young girl just messaged me and was like, "Thank you so much for inspiring me to be here." And it's moments like this that remind me just how powerful we all are. Just by acting, I had inspired someone else to do the same. We can all create these ripples of change. Environmental justice and a sustainable future requires that all have the right to a healthy environment. And so, we must have equity in our solutions. This means it will require all of us. First, let's just start by looking at what different climate and environmental issues that we face today. As you all know, we are in a climate and ecological crisis. We are accelerating our emissions rate every year. The IPBES Global Assessment Report on Biodiversity and Ecosystems states that around 1 million animal and plant species are now threatened with extinction than ever before in human history. And the UN IPCC report states that we need to limit global temperatures to 1.5 degrees Celsius and below to avert and avoid climate breakdown, something that we will face in our lifetimes if we don't act now. We can already see these disastrous weather events playing out that are linked to rising temperatures, such as the recent example of critical and dangerous heat waves, extreme flooding, impacts that can be seen across the world and even here in the UK, leaving many, particularly young people, feeling fearful of the future. Research shows that if we do not act, this climate crisis will have a dramatic effect on natural environments, plants, and animals, leading to acceleration in biodiversity loss. The impacts will then have many effects for communities that depend on natural resources, and often these effects are disproportionate. We can take the ocean, for example. Increasing CO2 levels in the atmosphere is causing ocean acidification, and all life on Earth depends on the ocean. It provides energy and water for people, wildlife, habitat. It regulates our global climate, generates the oxygen that we breathe, and stores excess carbon. It plays a fundamental role in mitigating climate change, but it is currently under threat. And deep ocean ecosystems and coastal communities are already seeing the impacts of that. We can also see the issue of air pollution, something which hits home for me as someone who grew up in one of the most polluted areas in London. This poses a risk to health. And across the UK, communities of colour in particular are facing disproportionate impacts to this. We also have consumerism culture, which is causing environmental degradation. We make over 300 million tonnes of plastic each year, equivalent in weight to 1 billion African elephants. And here in the UK, we have a throwaway culture. The UK produces more plastic waste per person than almost any other country. And this is being shipped to countries who largely aren't equipped to deal with this, which is unjust. All of this is also having an impact on young people's mental well-being and young people's mental health, who are now more and more experiencing what is labeled as eco-anxiety. Although young people are crucial in leading the push for climate action, so many still do not feel as if they're able to make change. They do not feel educated enough about it. They don't feel like they have a voice, and they don't even know where to start, leaving youth feeling anxious and disempowered. So, those are the issues that we are facing. It's pretty bad, right? Well, the good news is that we still have a way out of this. Now we need to focus on the future and the solutions. For us to create the sustainable future, it is important that we know what it is we are actually working towards. So just take a moment to envision what sustainability could look like for you. Think about it. What does a green and just world look like to you? As I've learnt with my activism, imagining the future will shape your action in where you see that your skills and experience are best placed and give you the confidence that you need to act. For young people to feel empowered in their capabilities, they need to delve deeper into climate and environmental issues to understand it and to imagine a better world. My greatest hope for the future of sustainability is that we are committed to safeguarding the planet, that we achieve a green and just world in which we shift our priorities and relationship with nature. that we are constantly learning and do not stick to a destructive cycle that clearly is not working. I also think about the path to zero emissions and the systems that we have in place that can be changed to coexist with our ecosystems rather than recklessly taking from it. I think of protecting and restoring our vital habitats and carbon sinks, and halting the harmful activities that are driving species extinction, reducing the waste we produce, and actually putting the reduce, reuse, recycle that we all learn in school into action, both locally and globally. I also think about how we will benefit, not just our surrounding environments, but also our physical and mental well-being. And as I mentioned earlier, I envision a future where communities will feel empowered and will make their voices heard to ensure accountability. And that includes those communities currently marginalized who don't feel like their voices are well represented in the space and that they can actually make change. The crucial part of climate and environmental justice, what I campaign for, is justice. And so this means that social inequalities are also inextricably linked to sustainability. Now, this can all sound quite complicated, but when you think about the level of what we're dealing with, we will need change on every level of society. And that's what I mean when I talk about a just and sustainable transition. Natural science, technology, sociology, etc., cannot deal with climate breakdown alone, and they need to interconnect to solve this crisis. It is also important to note that when we're thinking and acting on solutions and technological development, that we are not simply carrying on business as usual. We have to shift away from climate breakdown completely. One interconnecting solution that I've learned about on my journey is environmental education. So learning about environmental issues broadened my knowledge and gave me the confidence that I needed to take action. Not all have access to this, and implementing educational solutions, especially for young people, means that we would develop a culture of caring for the climate. The green transition would be faster, and connection to nature also leads to better mental health. All of this is so relevant today for young people who are not only facing the climate crisis, but also a generation that has more mental health issues. And remember the issue of air pollution that I talked about earlier. This is something that is so important to me. And one solution that seeks to tackle the unequal aspects of this is by expansion of the ultra-low emission zone, as well as transition to electric vehicles, a push for more green spaces in heavily polluted areas, and, of course, the push for green energy that does not leave anyone behind. This is one example where many different sectors and groups have blended together to tackle an issue. There are also multiple local actions and solutions to be taken, such as producing products and food locally, developing more sustainable commuting, providing services to people affected by climate change, reusing and creating from the absurd amount of waste that we produce, reclaiming and protecting green spaces, and implementing consumption reduction on a local level. These are just some examples of the various different long-term solutions that are out there. So, how do you fit into all of this? As mentioned, a sustainable transition will require change at every level of society, and there are so many different roles that you can have within that. You have so much power in safeguarding this planet, and so much more than you realize. Again, one idea, one action can have a ripple effect, as we have seen with the youth climate movement. Think specifically here in terms of your personal skills and experiences. Do you bring a unique perspective? What are you already interested in, and what role could this have in sustainability? What are you already good at, and how could this be applied? When I first joined the movement, after the first youth climate strike in the UK, I had no idea what I was getting into. And I found out that a lot of young people are just finding their way in all of this. I was given opportunities to speak with policymakers and innovators, to mobilize more people, and to strategize and create for almost every environmental cause there was, to a point where it became overwhelming. Which is why I'm also here to remind you today to choose what you really want to focus on, maybe something that you're already interested in the sustainability space, instead of trying to tackle everything at once. The weight of the world is not on your shoulders alone. There's also one thing that people underestimate, something that you already have and you use every day but could for the planet, and that is your individual power. You can use this to enact change. And one way you can do this today is just by using your voice. Every single one of us has the power together to act. Using your voice is a valuable part of this. I started my activism as an ordinary student, and now I organize in sustaining a global climate movement. After I discovered the individual power that I had, I just took to the streets with a megaphone and then ended up talking to policymakers and innovators on an international scale, as well as organizing alongside activists all across the world for a global climate movement. Now I use my skills in such a variety of different ways for the planet. And you don't have to do what I do or what you see other activists doing. The powerful thing about this path to sustainability is that there are so many different people needed and so many different skills required. You just need to utilize what you already have, and also you can learn along the way and build upon that. I learned to keep a mind open to learning new things. On this journey, I discovered the incredible use for things I'd never thought of before, such as digital activism. Social media has greatly aided the climate movement, and in mobilizing so many people, it's been such a valuable tool. It has allowed us to share educational resources, news, and connect with other people all across the world and learn from each other. I personally have also faced eco-anxiety and moments where I doubt myself. But what has really helped me in that and empower me and in gaining confidence is by taking action in this movement and connecting with people around the world, learning from people who are already on the front lines and people who already have those solutions, people who are already kind of working on things. It is just such an incredible and powerful tool to really connect, and that's what we need together. That's what we need to do and come together for the future. I also discovered the power of the youth is truly monumental. I mean, we young people are incredible. We've not had as long to just kind of accept the world as it is, and have historically always been more daring in calling for action, in challenging injustices, and standing up for our futures, which is exactly what we are doing now. But of course, this is also a movement that needs everyone, an intergenerational collective. Us young people are not alone in this. We are at a turning point for humanity and for the earth that we call home, which is why we need to use our collective power that we have to protect it. Yes, we are running out of time, but we still have a choice into how we utilize that time. So, what are we waiting for? Thank you.
So my mind is actually blown right now. I took so much from what Dominique just said, and I'm feeling quite powerful. I'm feeling capable. I'm not sure about how you're feeling at home, but I know we'll lean into the Discord channel shortly, which Andriana is looking over. I think my biggest reflection from Dominique was that we are all capable. And sometimes the smallest action can have the biggest impact, something like a retweet or sharing an event with a friend, or having a single conversation with a loved one can make a big difference. And I was also reminded so gracefully by Dominique that caring for the planet doesn't just benefit the environment, it benefits us as humans as well, leaning into the human-centric conversation that we had with George earlier. I think we often forget as well how certain structures and potential solutions can cause further social disparities. I know Dominique touched on that. And with my background in D&I, I felt quite passionate about that. So ensuring that these systems are sustainable for the planet, but also lean into different communities and different lifestyles that we lead. What I will leave you with from Dominique's talk in terms of my reflections is that we are all capable of change. And as Dominique said, we need to think about what skills we already have and how those skills can contribute towards the fight for climate justice. As Dominique said, our voices are powerful. So I encourage you all to lean into your individual power and let's create some change together. So now let's head over to the couch where Reuben has some questions for Dominique.
Okay, Dominique, thank you for joining me here in my little cozy living room.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
You travelled over safely. Well done. Your talk was great, by the way. Thank you so much. There was a lot of gems that are going to take a little while for me, and I'm sure the people at home to actually process and sit with. So yeah, Thank you very much for that. What I noticed, or what's really stood out for me, is this idea of using our voice to create change. And I work in a lot of spaces where there's a lot of young people that have great ideas, great understanding of what change needs to happen. But some of them, and not just young people, even adults as well, aren't necessarily that front-facing. They don't really like social media. They might have anxiety around communicating publicly. So the question is, how can those people actually use their voice to create some change?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I actually work with a lot of activists who are the same in that way, and I have a lot of friends as well who don't like being in front of the camera or on stage. And the great thing about it, and this movement and the push for sustainability, is that they don't have to be. There's just so many different skills and experience that is needed. So they could be behind the scenes working on things. They could help strategize and create new ideas and work with others on new campaigns, for example. There are just so many different things that people can do, such a long list of them as well. And when I first joined the movement, I actually wasn't doing any speaking events or anything like that. At that time, I didn't really have the confidence to do that, but I started doing social media things for people. So I started live streaming the events and spreading around the news and everything like that. And even if people don't want to be on social media and they don't want to participate in that way, there are still so many other roles that people had in there, artists, creatives, just so many different people. It's quite a long list.
Yeah, I can imagine. Thank you. So what I'm hearing there is, using your voice can also mean literally being part of the bigger mission, not necessarily always talking and being publicly front-facing, using whatever skills you have within that arena to kind of help out. Yeah. And also what I'm taking from that is that confidence grows once you kind of get into that world and you start trying different things, and then you move up. That's a great note for everyone at home, and definitely a reminder for me. You talked about technology, obviously, quite a bit. You mentioned social media. I've seen your social media account. It's very active and there's a lot of great information on there. But are there any other ways you think we can use technology to actually create progressive change?
So I think there are lots of different ways that are being used at the moment that they can also be utilized for the future. So a lot of the times when we talk about using coexisting with nature, for example, and kind of using our natural carbon sinks and all that and everything that's still there, there's lots of technology that can be used in that way to help kind of monitor that, and how we can best kind of utilize that, and just in the entire transition to a green and sustainable future. You think about all the different levels of society and whatnot that needs to change. Tech can really just play into a lot of those different aspects, even on a more local level that people might not think about, in terms of I've seen a lot of different recent solutions in getting plastic out of the ocean, for example, and landfill, and all of these different great ideas that people are coming up with. So I think that can really just be utilized. And then just communication in general, which has just been absolutely amazing, not just in terms of education, but with really connecting with people. And I think that's definitely how I've most used tech in this as well. And I can really see that being a major player going forward.
Yeah, communication's a running theme as well. George mentioned it. So, my brain is popping off. I'd love to ask you so many more questions, but we're a little bit pushed for time. But thank you very much, Dominique. I appreciate that. Now, for everyone at home, we will be seeing Dominique again during our live Q&A. So get your questions down, and we can hit these guys up with them later on. And that will all be on Discord, run by Andriana. Just a heads up. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our second expert, who will be the builder. Our second expert is Dwayne Fields. Dwayne's an adventurer, explorer, and an educator. He's our builder, and what he'll do is bring to life an example of a built solution and its effect on sustainability in the UK. Having been a victim of both gang and gun crime, Dwayne was inspired to engage and educate young people in environmental issues and make it possible for them to create careers in this space. Not just understand the space, but literally start creating careers within the space. He's very committed to building a generation of climate champions and is an ambassador for the Scout Association. I was a Scout and a Cub, ask about me. The National Trust, the Woodland Trust, and is a fellow of the Royal Geographical Society. So, please make some noise at home or wherever you are for Dwayne Fields.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Listen, it's brilliant to be announced as an adventure explorer. It's a great title, but in truth, this is where I started. Not any different to any other young person on this planet. Every single kid, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, they are out to gain knowledge, experience, learn things, and just be part of the world they're in. Now, my life started in rural Jamaica. Now, that's really rural Jamaica. I say that because in my house, we didn't have a shred of technology. The most technologically advanced device we had was a small radio that operated on those really thick batteries. We didn't have running water, no gas, no electricity. And because of that, most of my youth was spent outside. I'd argue 95% of every single waking moment was spent outside. And for me, this is where my love of the outdoors started. I remember being a kid, and I was so much part of nature, in fact, that I'd get into trouble quite a lot. An example of that would be, I'm 5 years old, I see a parrot fly across the sky, and I think, oh, that looks pretty, that looks interesting. And I'm pretty sure everyone watching this will agree with me, a parrot flying is interesting. A parrot landing on a termite nest in high up in a tree is also interesting, but it's not where you should go. Well, 5-year-old Dwayne didn't understand that concept of not being able to go anywhere. So I decided I was going to climb that tree and find out why that parrot decided to go into that termite nest. And I eventually got to the top of the tree, got to the termite nest, pushed my hand in this hole, really silly thing to do, but I did it anyway, pushed my hand in this hole and pulled out a baby parrot. Completely the wrong thing to do. I fell into a hornet's nest. Now, that's just a simple anecdote to illustrate how much I was part of nature. Sometimes I was too much part of nature. For me, the outdoors has always been an amazing space to be in. It's where I've learned to test my confidence, improve my skills. I've learned to survive in the outdoors. But the main thing for me was I learned to love the outdoors by being in the outdoors. This picture was taken a few weeks after I arrived in Britain. I was about 6 years old. And this picture actually illustrates how much of a feral child I was. I couldn't understand the concept of leaving one country and coming to another one. Yes, geographically, I was in a new place. Socially, I was in a new place. And economically, you could argue I was in a new place as well, because now we did have all the finities in the household, which were water, gas, electricity. We had a TV, something I'd never experienced before. But in my hands in this picture, it's not the best one. There's a baby squirrel. Now, what I did with that parrot as a 5-year-old kid, I came to Britain with that same mentality. I wanted to be part of nature. I wanted to invite nature into my house. I wanted to hold it, but I wanted to be immersed in nature. I arrived in Britain. I looked up in a tree, and I saw a tuft of leaves, and I thought to myself, what's that? I climbed the tree, and I knew I was doing something wrong because there was a crowd gathering and saying things like, little boy, what are you doing? At this stage, I thought, well, I'm 6, 7 years old. I've done this before. I can do this. It's not hard. Climbed the tree, took this baby squirrel out of its nest, and I took it home. Again, the completely wrong thing to do, but I did it anyway. I took it home, and someone saw it and thought, yeah, let me document this foolish behavior. And that's where this picture comes from. Now, the reason I tell you these stories is because I wanted to illustrate exactly who I was as a child. And I know there's many young people out there, 5, 6, 7 years old, who would do similar things because it feels right to climb a tree. It feels right that when it's a warm day and you're on some grass, it feels right to kick your shoes off and walk barefooted. It feels right to sit under a tree and take in the shade. All these things feel right because it's our natural, it's built in, it's innate, it's something that we do naturally. And somewhere between around puberty, we lose that. We lose that passion for the outdoors. And in actual fact, I remember the moment I lost my passion for the outdoors. It would have been a couple of weeks after this picture was taken. I was 7 years old, and I'd been in the country for about 2 months. I was in school, and I realized I wasn't making friends. The only friend I had was that kid that the teacher put me next to on day one and said, show him the ropes. It's the only friend I had. And I thought, right, Dwayne, you have to do better than this. If you want to make friends, talk to these kids. Again, I didn't know how to talk to kids in Britain. I didn't know who the best cartoon character was or what the best magazine to read was. I didn't know what the best TV program to watch was. And I thought to myself, right, what do you know, Dwayne, and what do you love? And I thought about it for a long time, and I figured it out. I said, Dwayne, you love the outdoors. You love wildlife. You love nature. Share that with these kids, and they'll get on with you. You'll talk to them. That's how you start a dialogue. I realized that the only bit of real nature that I had access to at the same time as these kids was the school garden. So I went into the school garden on a playtime, and I thought to myself, right, gather as much nature as you can. Bear in mind, I was 7 years old, so I didn't know exactly how to do it. So I went into the school gardens, and I dug up a handful of dirt and wood lice, and there was some worms in there and other creepy crawlies. And I ran over to these kids thinking they would be as passionate about the wildlife, the nature, the animals, the creatures, the insects in my hands as I was. Sure enough, I ran over and I presented my hand, and they all laughed and pointed and ran away and said I was nasty and I was dirty and all these things. And it pushed me further away from all these kids. And I thought to myself, right, Dwayne, you're doing something wrong here. Now, that thought creeping into my head was the moment that I decided, don't be yourself. Nature isn't cool. Fast forward a few years, and I'm living in Hackney in East London, and life's events takes place, and I decide, you know what, Dwayne, you need to go back to being you. I'm in my early 20s. I think you need to go back to being you. I couldn't identify who I was because from the age of 7 to the age of 21, 22, I'd pretended to like so many things that other people liked, and I put the thing that I loved most to the side, which was the outdoors, nature, wildlife. I put that to the side and decided to say yes to things that I didn't want to say yes to. I wanted to enjoy the things that other people, or pretend to enjoy the things that other people enjoyed. And for me, it all became too much. And an opportunity arose by pure chance, an opportunity for me to walk to the North Pole. And I thought, Dwayne, just do it. This is as far from everything that you've grown up around as you can get. Just do it. And I thought to myself, right, well, it's the North Pole. It's going to be all white, as it is in this picture. I thought it's going to be long. It's going to be boring. It's going to be hard. But when I started to walk, I realized something. I realized that every single thing I loved, it wasn't the trees, it wasn't the fruits that was on those trees, it wasn't the animals per se, specifically the species that I grew up around. It was just the fact that I was in a natural environment that I fell in love with. And for that reason, as hard and as tiring and as cold and as windy and as hungry and as fed up and agonizing, I'm not really selling it to you, but as agonizing as it was, I loved every second of it because I was in my element. I loved the outdoors, and that's what the North Pole allowed me to do. I learned some key lessons on this trip as well, this Antarctic expedition. It was 22 days of walking across frozen ocean. I came across polar bears. They are massive, terrifying. I came across them, and I realized that they had very little interest in me for the most part. And I thought, well, actually, I'm in this natural environment with all these wild animals that I'm told I should be wary of and I should be keeping my distance from, which is the right thing to do. And almost told that these environments aren't for you. Whether that's because you grew up in Hackney or grew up in London, or if it's because you're inexperienced and you've never done anything like this before. I was always covered, or I was always had this feeling of this environment is not for you. And here I was in the Arctic, one of the most inhospitable places on the planet, and I was happy just to be there. And I realized something. I realized that actually, maybe other people have heard that message as well. Maybe other people have been told or felt like these environments aren't for them. So what could I do about that? How many young kids are out there who maybe feels like, it's not cool to go outside in the park or play in the trees or play in the fields. It's not cool to dig underneath that rock. And I thought, how many young people are out there like that? I thought, I'm going to find out. And if I don't find out, I'll tell you what, I'll help one or two along the way to learn to love environments like this, or better still, learn to love the environments close to home. So many of us, and this image here illustrates that. Many of us, we would love the outdoors if we had the opportunity to go outdoors. And many more of us don't actually realize we do. The outdoors is literally one step outside your front door. Most of us live in a space where at the bottom of your road there's a tree, there's a green space, there's a bit of grass, and we never use it. We walk past it every day. We never look up and wonder what type of tree that is and what the ecosystems on that tree look like, what other animals those trees are supporting. A single tree can support hundreds of species. A single tree absorbs 15 to 20 kilograms of CO2 every single year. 1 square kilometer of grass creates all the oxygen you as an individual need to breathe. That's how important these spaces that we walk past every single day are. I thought to myself, I want to introduce that knowledge to somebody else. I want to learn more about it myself, because I've always loved these environments for the selfish reasons that, I've just enjoyed being in them. So I've loved it. And I thought to myself, well, actually, we're 8 years, 9 years away from what some would argue is a climate disaster. I think the fact that we're stood here and talking about it is a disaster in itself. And I thought to myself, well, not every single person can go out and fight that climate fight, but what can each individual do? And I thought, well, the best way to get people to do a small amount is to hopefully encourage them to enjoy the environment, learn to like the environment, understand an environment near to home, and that would eventually turn into loving and appreciating that environment. And if they can protect that small environment close to home, and each and every individual can do something small like that, I thought to myself, well, that's a good place to start. The young people in this image are some amazing young people who'd never left London. I took them from various areas in London. I gave them some basic skills up in Epping Forest. While I was there, I'll teach them about some of the species that they could eat and the ones they definitely shouldn't. I taught them about some of the wildlife they might come across. They loved it. And I realized, actually, the same energy inside me as that little kid, feral kid running around in Jamaica, is in every single one of us. We then climbed to the top of Ben Nevis, which is the highest mountain in mainland Britain. Now, they belly ached. They'd never done anything like this before. They belly ached and they cursed and complained every step of the way, cried. And the moment they got to the top, it was like, wow, didn't know I could. The feeling was one of elation. They were smiling and high-fiving. And then we had to walk back down again, and there was more belly aching. But the fact of the matter was, when we reached the top of that mountain, it was something that they never believed they could do, would do, or even should do. And since then, of the 5 of them, 4 of the 6 of them, 4 of them have asked me time and time again, when are we going out again? I really like that. Now, for me, that's a win. That tells me that these guys will go out there and look to protect that environment if they can, or do their little bit to protect the environment close to home, which is what I hope every single person on this planet does. If we all move a pebble, pretty soon we'd have a mountain. Now, one of my favorite things to do when I'm on an expedition, whether it's in a desert, the ocean, a jungle in Central America, the Arctic, is I say things to myself to egg myself on, make sure I keep taking that next step. And one of my favorite quotes is, go confidently in the direction of your dreams. It's a quote from a man called Henry Thoreau. Now, for me, that's more than just words. And I know quotes are meant to be more than just words, and this one in particular is. Because for me, my dreams see me taking young people on expedition across the world, but not costing the world. Every expedition I take young people on, I expect them to pay for it, not in money or monetary value. I want them to do something locally, join up with local initiatives to pay for the carbon that trip's going to produce, and the carbon produced throughout their life and well beyond it. I've worked with many, many young people over the years, and one of the main things that I notice is every single one of them have this really powerful device. It's a handheld phone, mobile phone. And for me, technology is probably the greatest tool that we have, apart from ourselves, in combating climate change. In 2022, February 2022, February 26, 2022, I'm taking a group of young people, myself and my teammate, to Antarctica on the world's first carbon negative expedition of its kind. And the reason we can make it carbon negative is because of technology. So technology, software and hardware plays a crucial role in making sure that we are solving the problems of tomorrow, the ones that we're living today as well. The expedition ship, it was designed using technology. It's one of the greenest vessels floating at the moment. It sleeps 600. It produces 20% less carbon. It recycles the engine heat, and it uses the coolant from the engines to warm the vessel itself. Every single one of these young people, I will have them tapping away on their mobile phones, utilizing the technology that they have at their fingertips to find local initiatives that they can help support, get involved with, and pay it forward. This isn't about just the individual, it's about them doing something for their communities. When we're on the actual expedition, they're going to be collecting samples from phytoplankton. They're going to be collating and wrangling data, which they can share instantly because of technology. So I think investing in that and investing in young people, definitely two of the key ways that we're going to move forward and solve many of the challenges that we face today. The expedition itself is one not about hardship. I think in the past we've seen the title adventurer and explorer. It's a person that looks pretty much like that. Covered in snow, going through hardship, struggling, hungry, tired, dragging a pulk behind. I've done it. Expeditions aren't about that. For me, expeditions are about learning and passing on that experience through storytelling. While we're away, the young people will be utilizing technology to share the experience on a daily basis. They'll be having conference calls and talks and doing presentations with people all over the world, talking about the experience, what they learned, what they hope to achieve, and what their research, the citizens, if I can get it out, the citizen science projects that they're working on. Like I said, mapping, geographical mapping. They'll be working with meteorologists, geologists, deep sea biologists. They're going to be talking to other young people about the benefits of their work and how it will help going forward. One of the best things about going on an adventure is you get to meet people from all over the world. You get to talk to people who have nothing in common with you. But there's always something, if you dig deep enough, there's always something you can find to connect you with the next person. And for me, it's this. Most of life's failures are people who didn't know how close they were to success when they gave up. Now, this is a quote that I play through my head every single time I'm going through something difficult. And this quote gives me a lot of hope as well. It plays in my head when I'm going through something difficult because I never want to stop, because I always think about how far we've come. And I think we've come a long way. We now understand the problems that we face as a global community. We now understand the scale of the problems, and through using technology, we can use the data to map solutions. We can do projections, future projections, to tell us exactly how long we've got. That's why we know we've got approximately 8 or 9 years. We can tell how much carbon we're putting out individually because of technology. But for me, back to the quote, for me, it's about hope. And I think we're so close to success. I think at any point, the past speaker and the one after me could be the straw that breaks the camel's back in a good way. They could be the people who galvanize the nations that need galvanizing and get us to the stage where we say, yes, we need to stop this. We need to change our behaviors. We need to learn more about the environments that we're in so we learn to love them more. And for me, that's what this is about. Going out into these environments, loving the environments, and learning to protect the environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dwayne. I really appreciate the talk. I mean, as per usual, with every speaker that gets up, every expert that gets up and talks, there's so much that's going through my head, and I assume yours as well. And I tried to distill my top learnings like Taz shared with you guys earlier on. I think the first one that came to mind with Dwayne's talk was what he was talking about at the beginning, where he clearly, like without a shadow of a doubt, knew that he belonged in nature. Like that's a massive part of his like soul and DNA. but sometimes like en route in life, whether it's socialization, friends and family, culture, it's just pulling him away from that. But the beautiful thing is, and this is with so many people we work with as well on this project, is that that voice around that thing that you want to do or explore doesn't ever go away. And the more you try to like keep that closed or shut it off, the more resistance you're going to feel around the other things in life. So I'd say that's the first lesson, like listen to what the true calling is and start really incrementally exploring that. And the second one was just this reinforced idea that nature is more than something we just pass through. It's like 2020 has been so key for me in regards to me understanding and working with nature. Like I used to literally just pass through the park, right? Like on my way to somewhere. Now I intentionally go to the park, whether it's to meet community or literally just to take space, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels this. There is clearly a calming and healing aura about being in nature. So yeah, massive thank you to Dwayne for reminding me, and probably a lot of you guys at home, on just some of those points there, man. Right, now it's over to Taz, who has even more questions for Dwayne.
Hey Dwayne, welcome to Living Room.
Amazing space.
It's great, isn't it? Loads of natural light. Welcome back. That was so great. I've taken so much from that personally as well. I wanted to hone in on something specific that you mentioned. You said we protect what we love, right?
Yes, we do.
And so for those of us that unintentionally, I'm guilty of this as well, we unintentionally take nature for granted.
Yes.
How can we start to build a more loving relationship with nature and feel more connected to it?
Just like anything in life, I think it's important to remember, don't beat yourself up for, what someone else says you should be doing, or if you've made mistakes, don't beat yourself up. Draw a line under it, say, right, this is where I'm going to start. And for me, I think getting outside, it could be going to the local park and taking off your shoes. One of my favorite things to do is when I'm back home in Jamaica or wherever I'm in the garden, take off your shoes and just stand on the grass, and it just brings you that bit closer. Use the spaces around you. Most communities have a green space at the end of their road. They've got a number of trees. I love nothing more than stopping and just looking at a tree and seeing what's crawling around on that tree. Oh, look, there's something. Oh, what's that? I've never seen that before. For some reason, we're apprehensive about doing that. We seem to go from one place to another place and ignore everything in between it. And I think if we just start slowing down a little bit, just stop for a moment and look at that flower, look at the rose, look at that insect. If you don't know what it is, there are loads of apps.
Technology. Use the power of technology.
Absolutely.
I love that. I'm not going to lie. There's something really grounding about being barefoot on grass. And I think more than grass, my favorite is probably having my toe, like my sand between my toes.
Yeah.
I almost got that the wrong way around.
Do you know what? I absolutely hate sand on my feet.
No.
I do.
Okay.
Grass, mud, any day. I can't stand sand. It just never goes away.
Oh, this is true. It never goes away. So then, and I guess from another perspective as well, sometimes when I've had conversations around like connecting with nature, a lot of my friends will say, and when I used to be a teacher, a lot of the children that I used to speak to would say, oh, well, we can't afford to travel here, or we can't afford to travel there. But actually, what you're telling me just feels like we need to maximize the space that we already have around us. We don't really need extra money or have to worry about finances for that. And that's so great.
Absolutely. And I think as well, if you start using these spaces and you appreciate them for what they are, they're all biodiverse hotspots. You start seeing that ant and the aphids and all the other creatures around. You start to appreciate them. And like I said, when you appreciate something, you like it, you want to protect it. And when local councils say, oh, we're going to tear down this green space or we're going to build on it, you will get out there and say, well, actually, no, I like that space. And that's a really good place to start.
Yeah, I agree. Could you tell us, you briefly mentioned technology a minute ago. You said there are apps and everything. So how have you harnessed technology in the work that you're doing? How have you spread the message through the work that you're doing as well?
So one of the great things about technology is it allows you to wrangle data, loads of data, and narrow it down to bite-sized chunks. I can't handle a lot of data. So
Me
for
too.
me, it just
I'm not a
doesn't-
numbers person.
I'm not a big data person. Give it to me in small chunks. I can manage it that way. I can then cascade that information out to somebody, whether it's a young person, older person, even elderly person. And it's about just being able to manage data. It's about being able to connect with people. It's about using data to map what you're seeing as well. I'm always looking at maps. online. I'm always looking at what species I might find in a place. I'm always looking at routes. I use it to plan what I'm going to do. I use it in every single step of my, other than the walk in itself. I use it in every single step of the work that I do in the outdoors, adventuring. You just have to. You can't help it.
Even if you're a little bit afraid of data, I get quite scared when I see big numbers. I can't always process big amounts of data. But you're saying that it's really easy. Are there any recommendations on how we can do that, or any pages that we could also follow?
So remember, I know people are apprehensive and a little bit anxious, and it does build up anxieties. I think there was a study done a few years back, and it found that 80% of people after leaving school try to avoid maths.
Oh, wow.
Now, my thinking behind this is, listen to podcasts, listen to people, follow them, see what they do, talk. You can connect to people so easily, so much easier now than you could 10, 15 years ago. It's not always about numbers. Sometimes it's about the imagery. And in actual fact, we connect with images so much better than we do with numbers quite often. And if you go onto a website and just say, what insects are close to my house?
Oh, it's as simple as that.
It's as simple as that. And you will find some amazing mini beasts. I mean, I was out just a couple of days ago and I found something called a six-spotted bonnet. Never seen one before. It's a beautiful little, it looks like a moth. It's a I want everyone to go and Google it now because it's a beautiful little creature.
Okay. Everyone go and Google that. Say that again for us.
It's a six-spotted bonnet.
Six-spotted bonnet.
Yes.
Okay, interesting, like a moth. On that note, I do love butterflies, and I remember visiting a butterfly garden when I was really young.
Yes.
And it's super hot, and I had no idea that butterflies thrived in like such hot temperatures.
Yes.
And a lot of them are free. A lot of the
Yeah.
a lot of the places up and down, a lot of the locations up and down the UK for nature spots are free. So I'm really excited to see the chatter that's happening in Discord later on around that as well. Hopefully everyone can go home and Google the six-spotted bonnet as well. Last question for you, Dwayne. What do you feel is holding people back from creating environmental change or going out into these spaces? I know you mentioned earlier, you said in your talk, from once we hit like almost puberty, we almost have this apprehension about going out. What else do you think it is that's holding us back?
I think it's people just fear what they don't understand, and we avoid it because, if I don't understand it, it might be hard for me to catch up to the people who do. No. Go out there, just walk to the end of your road, have a look at what you see, and just take your time. There's no rush, there's no pressure, there's no one telling you what you should find, what you should notice, what you shouldn't. Just go and take your own time to absorb that small environment. And when you like that, I guarantee you'll start going to your local park and your national parks and connecting with the RSPB and the other wildlife bodies around the country.
Sounds good. Sounds like a plan. I think I'll have to take advice on that myself as well. Do you know what, Dwayne? We could sit here and talk for ages, but it is time to introduce our next guest. So we're about to hear from Joycelyn Longdon, who will play the role of the dreamer. Now, Andriana mentioned the dreamer earlier. And the dreamer is here to help you imagine what might be possible for society through the power of tech. She's going to share some ideas to spark innovation and question the role of technology in solving the problems of the future. Joycelyn is the founder of Climate in Colour, which is an online education platform and community for the climate curious, making climate conversations more accessible and diverse. Joycelyn is the first year, Masters of Research and PhD student at Cambridge University, using AI to address the climate emergency. Welcome, Joycelyn.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be speaking today. And hopefully within the next 15 minutes, I'll be able to highlight to you the ways in which maybe technology has contributed to some of our polluting and consumer-driven behaviors, but also the incredibly important role it has to play in solving our current climate crisis. In the face of our current challenges, I want to take you on a journey of imagination and creativity and inspire you to think of the ways that we can, one, design in a way that mitigates against social and planetary harm using sustainable practices, and two, looking at design that goes further, adding positively to our society. Design lives everywhere. It is foundational to our lives and our legacies, and so it is foundational to our futures. It governs the ways in which we interact with, connect to, and have an impact to the environment. I currently sit on the board for the Waste Stage exhibition from the Design Museum. And this exhibition looks at all of the amazing, imaginative, new, ingenious research, products, and materials that people are working really hard on and dedicating their lives to in order to move us towards cleaner futures. I often get questions about my own practice and what it means to apply AI to climate change and how those things go together. So I'll give you a couple of examples, and I'll give you an example of my work a little bit later on. So one example of how technology has been applied to climate change is in the realm of food waste. So food waste is a huge issue. We have domestic food waste from our houses, but also a large amount of food waste comes from industry. So from fast food companies, from supermarkets and office buildings. One technology company in the States is trialing putting little cameras in industrial bins, and those cameras are hooked up to machine learning algorithms. Those algorithms have been trained to identify certain objects like rotting bananas and rotting apples, but also other products and materials like wood and metal, so it can really understand what's being thrown away. And the reason that this is really useful is because it gives real-time updates and actionable data for companies to understand not just how much food they're wasting or how much waste is coming in and out of the company, but also what exactly they're throwing away and where they're throwing it away. Another example is with drought prediction. So drought is a really important and devastating environmental risk, and it is essential to understand when drought is going to happen, where it's going to happen, to support the livelihoods of farmers and also the functioning of our global food system. There is a research lab in South Africa called Itiki, and they are combining indigenous knowledge of farmers in South Africa with machine learning methods and image recognition of different plants and plant diseases to understand and predict when droughts are going to happen. But it's not just AI. From electric-powered buses that run our cities to 3D printed homes that are slashing emissions from the construction industry, technology and design together are playing a critical role in solving our climate crisis. It's also important, however, to note that technology also contributes to the climate crisis. Those same AI models, in the extreme, in one run, can emit as much CO2 as one car in its entire lifetime. Or take, for example, the design theory of planned obsolescence, which renders objects to have a really short lifespan and has resulted in a mind-boggling amount of electronic waste and this ocean being full of single-use plastic. It might be daunting to kind of hear these facts that what is also a possible solution to the climate crisis is also acting as a problem. But for me, one skill that I think is going to be really important as the climate crisis progresses is being able to look these challenges in the face and use our curiosity to change our anxiety to action. And within that action comes design. So designing for a sustainable future does start with identifying these problems and issues. But this is only one part of the puzzle. My work as a researcher in the climate and tech space is all about dreaming more efficient and more equitable applications of technology as a tool to some of the world's greatest problems. More importantly, my role is also to challenge what it is that we consider to be sustainable. So right now, when we've been talking about sustainable all evening, you might think of renewable energy, you might think of recyclable materials, but that isn't all that technology is. All of our lives are designed. The institutions we're in, whether that's your school or your university or your workplace, the systems that we live within, so our economy and our communities, the way our cities are designed. All of those things are governed by design, and the way in which those things are designed really sets the tone for who is set to profit and who or what will suffer or be exploited. Sustainability is not just about carbon emissions missed or carbon emissions saved. It's also about creating healthy and equitable environments and communities. It's about creating spaces where there are fair wages and livable spaces. And it's also about dismantling systems of oppression. So this might all sound a little bit abstract at the minute, so I'm going to dive into my research and explain to you what I hope to be doing over the next 3 years, linking in all of these different aspects. So as mentioned before, I'm currently studying for a PhD at Cambridge, applying AI to climate change. Specifically, I am going to be looking at forest ecology, so specifically tropical forests. Tropical forests are so important in climate mitigation strategy. They sequester, so they absorb 24% of all the carbon emissions we emit every year. But they are under threat, as you might know, from deforestation, illegal logging, increased forest fires from climate change. But there's another part of that story. Indigenous communities around the world protect 80% of our biodiversity, and many of them are protecting those incredibly important tropical forests. But just like those forests, those indigenous communities are also at threat. But they're at threat from the people who are trying to solve the climate crisis, from conservation groups and technology companies trying to protect the forest. The key issue here is that in a rush to apply new and exciting technology to some of our huge challenges, such as deforestation, we have missed out the knowledge, the culture, the rights, and the value of the very people trying to protect it, and who have been protecting those ecosystems for thousands of years. I believe that in order to design better and truly sustainable futures, we need to understand, respect, and listen to the wide variety and diversity of cultures, practices, and experiences from around the world. So my work will be applying machine learning, a form of artificial intelligence, and audio sensors in a realm called bioacoustics to forest ecosystems. So I'll be putting audio sensors within the forest canopy, and what this will do is it will listen to the forest. It will listen out for anthropogenic sounds, such as chainsaws, gunshots, trucks, talking, but also environmental sounds, such as birds and other sort of wildlife. And along with the Ashanti tribe, which are the tribe that my parents are from in Ghana, using and respecting their knowledge and their traditions of the forest, will bring this all together to monitor the health of the forest and to mitigate against those anthropogenic disturbances such as logging. My work in academia seeks to amplify the sacred knowledge of my ancestors whilst applying state-of-the-art machine learning and AI technology, and really design a new framework for how we do research and how we use technology as a really powerful tool to some of these incredibly challenging, daunting problems that we are currently facing as a global community. As designers, and that includes all of you at home watching now, we have to continually push our standards ever higher. Iteration is a huge word in the design space, and this just means constantly improving the ideas that we have. Sustainable design is about reflecting on all the things we've done well, but also all the things that we haven't done as well, and using our imagination and dreaming up solutions to where we are falling short. It's not achieved by just fixing the bare minimum, but by really functioning in a fundamentally different way, one that fosters and cherishes beauty. Although sustainability is important, it is only one step along the way. Further on from sustainability is regenerative design. Design that not only fixes the problems ahead of us, but actually adds positively to our societies, that we can take from it more than we put into it. What would our world look like if design and technology didn't only take in the product or the output at the end, but also happiness, culture, respect, community, collaboration. What does that look like to you? So as you go away and think about your own solutions in all of these different spaces, be it food, water, technology, renewable energy, think about this balance in the mix. I hope that throughout this talk and through explaining my research, I've been able to inspire you to not only dream of a better future, but hopefully build it yourself. Thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you so much, Joycelyn. That was so thought-provoking and intense at the same time, but in a good way. And I took a lot from that. I think my biggest reflection from Joycelyn was just how much progress we can make for the environment through technology. I never knew that there was a type of AI that can identify a banana's lifespan through its ripeness. And then it reminded me of a post that I saw on social media recently, where in the Far East, bananas are packaged according to their ripeness. So you get one that's ready to eat, one that's just a day behind, and they're packed in like numbers of 7. And I thought, what a great idea, because my bananas tend to all go at the same time. And then I have to eat like 6 in the space of 48 hours. Joycelyn also mentioned how we already know the buzzwords around climate change, right? Paper over plastic, carbon emissions, and so on. But actually, she said sustainability needs to look like healthy and equitable spaces and communities. And that really spoke to me. I think my final thought around Joycelyn's talk was around her emphasis on the human side to climate activism, the compassion that we need to build sustainable systems, the understanding of history and cultures really spoke to me. And I hope that's something that you take away with you tonight as well. It is time to head over to the couch for one last time to hear from Joycelyn and some questions that Reuben has for her. Over to you, Reuben.
Right, we are here in the living room in KX, and I'm sat with Joycelyn. Amazing talk.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and like I said, even before we went on air, like there's so much stuff there to think about in that 15 minutes talk. Like for me to learn that there's cameras in bins, you know what I mean, and that there's sensors in jungles and forests, it's just totally new to me. I mean, you're doing amazing work using tech with the natural world. But my question is, and I'm sure a lot of people have felt this before, this frustration before, right? But there are a lot of people that are working towards sustainable change, right? And they get quite upset when friends and family aren't taking it as seriously. Maybe older generations, not necessarily just to name older generations, but a lot of the time it is that aren't necessarily aware. How do we navigate those conversations sensitively? Like, do you have any tips or tricks to like get those peeps on board that actually help with the mission?
I think it's really important to know your friends and family and to understand the relationships you have there. And it's going to be different for everyone's family. I know my family situation is very different to other people's family situations. But one thing that I think can be applied across the board, whatever your relationships are, is just leading by example. You don't always have to be shouting people down or forcing them to make different decisions, because in general, there are so many different ways that we can take action on climate, and that no one has the one solution. No one's action will cover all boards. And while some people are doing amazing, they might be, missing in some other areas. We're not experts. Everyone is trying their best. And I think that understanding where your family are at and meeting them there, leading by example, and making them want to follow what you were doing. Because I think one of the worst things would be pushing someone so far away that they don't want to make a change, or that out of spite, they don't want to make a change. And I've seen a lot with my own relationships that merely by just continuing by my day as I do, sharing information, talking about things all the time, not necessarily to them specifically, but being vocal about what I believe in and living and walking every day in what I believe in, they're going to take that on, because they're looking on Instagram. Oh, she's talking about this, she's talking about that. Oh, maybe I should go aside. And I've seen some friends where they have had some practices in the past that, are not that sustainable. And over the years, I haven't said anything specifically to them, but every time I'm around them, I'm talking about the things that I'm doing. I'm talking about the way I'm living my life, where I'm doing my shopping from, all of these things. And slowly, you see people's actions changing. And that's so much more empowering for that person to know that they've made the decision themselves rather than feeling that they're being judged. So I think compassion is a really important part. It might be frustrating for you because you've made all these great changes, but actually you were at that point, in some point in your journey. We're all on a different journey. And so having compassion for other people and really leading by example in a gracious way, that's just how I would approach it. So
well languaged. I mean, meeting someone where they're at is super, super helpful. Definitely a lesson I think a former me could have taken. Like, I wish I had these gems dropped a little bit earlier on, because sometimes I have been, and I'm sure people at home as well, I've been like, do you know what I mean? It gets frustrating, but to take a softer approach, lead by example, and maybe even ask questions about what they're doing and what they're using to get them thinking about stuff, right?
And I think it's just like, really casual things, like mention, when we're talking about shopping, where do I get my groceries from? It's just a casual thing. It's not like, you need to get your groceries from here. It's just, I actually use this place, they're organic and they do this, that, and the other. And I go, what was the name of that one again?
That is the hustle, man. Like, I had a friend that literally asked me, like, where'd you get that bag from? And I had no clue. I then had done the research. I was like, okay, I probably need to make some different changes. So, no doubt. Last question, just due to time. Fast forward 10 years, right? Imagine, because you guys are at the fringe with the work you're doing, but if we've pushed it forward 10 years, what advances in tech do you think we'll be seeing play a role in sustainability?
I think for the most part, tech is going to be at every level. It's in ecology, it's in energy, it's across the board, it's in oceanography. And I think that I don't want to focus on one technology specifically, because there is over-reliance on like this one technology that's going to save us. But I really think what we're going to be seeing is technology in every aspect of the change that we're making, whether that's in producing and distributing renewable energy, whether that's in tracking biodiversity. It's just everything's going to be scaled right up, and technology is going to be a key tool in moving us to that transition faster and providing, as someone has said before, I think Dwayne, the data that we need to make the right decisions. So I think, technology is just going to be that ubiquitous, like your Instagram now, you don't really think about it, but technology is just going to be everywhere, backing all of the action that we're taking. Yeah.
Exciting times, no doubt. And your passion is just so clear. And just good luck with all the work you're doing. You're doing a great job. Yeah, no doubt, man. Just a reminder that we will see Joycelyn again during the Q&A, so get your questions sorted, put them on Discord. Andriana's going to arrange them and feed them out to us. So, talking of Andriana, I'm going to send it over to Taz and Andriana to check in on the community on Discord.
Hey, everyone. Andriana, tell us how the online family are doing over on Discord.
You know what? This session was so different than the last one. Like, it was less questions and it was more sharing resources so that we can all start from somewhere in being more sustainable. The amount of gems of resources that you've got, like Solana shared a vegan calculator that calculates the impact you have when you switch to one veggie meal during the day. That's absolutely amazing. And we were talking a lot about the choices we make in terms of clothing and fashion, and how do you change up from cheap clothes to actually buying local, and what does that mean? And I mean, it brings a lot of things up for me in terms of like compassion and how you actually pay attention to the things that you wear rather than go with the trends. And the other thing that seems to be really important is, how is sustainability a privilege? How did the branding make us believe that it's something that is unreachable? Whereas, the way that Joycelyn was phrasing it now, it's just a suggestion. Let's just gently move towards that way.
Yeah. That's so great. Do you know, Andriana, you just reminded me of a conversation I had, not to out my sister publicly, but I had a conversation with her recently. And you met my sister, Andriana, and we were talking about food in general, and my family are meat eaters. And we were talking about chicken, and someone mentioned plucking a chicken, and my sister was like, oh, that's horrible. but she's probably the one that eats it the most in the house. And the first thing that came to mind was how disconnected we are from the produce line, from like farm to plate, how disconnected we are and how accessible food is, that we can just go into a supermarket and pick up a chicken leg or, vegetables and not understand the love and attention and nurturing that goes behind it. So
that's so fascinating you say that, because 2 years ago in not a school with Samsung, we had a designer, Mariam, who came in and she was talking about indigenous practices in Ethiopia, where being like not eating meat isn't the sustainable thing to do there, because what you do is you eat the meat and then you use every single part of the animal into something else. So like the actual engagement with nature is on a complete different level at different parts of the world. So yeah, it just speaks mountains to the disconnection we have from what's in front of us.
yeah, I hear that. Well, looking forward to jumping onto Discord after the event. I'm sure Reuben and I will have a chance to jump on and see all of the gems that you have been dropping tonight. I'm about to be joined by Reuben now. Welcome back, Rubes. So as Reuben's joining us, just a quick update before I pass back to Andriana to explain something called the Critical Design Lab. But in a few weeks, we'll be launching Solve for Tomorrow, an on-demand, free online accredited course focusing on tonight's theme of designing for a sustainable future with content created by some of the experts that you've heard from tonight. We've shared the link to enroll with you all on Discord, so head over there. At the end of the year, we'll also be launching the Solve for Tomorrow competition, and there'll be more information coming very soon about this. But for now, you can register your interest at samsung.com/UK/solve for tomorrow. We're here to support you in turning your ideas for social change into reality through an exciting series of workshops on Discord. Andriana, tell us about the wonders of the Critical Design Lab.
Okay, so this is the home of come through with your ideas, let's make them happen. The first session is on the 29th of July at 6 p.m. UK time, and I will be there once a month for an hour, and I've designed a workshop to walk you through every single step that you can go through with your ideas in order to develop it and have something solid to submit to Solve for Tomorrow of Samsung. There will be exposure to a range of design tools, such as figuring out your mission statement, conducting worthy research, and identifying your target markers so that you're designing for someone rather for an ideal. That's a thing that designers always do. You have to go back to the source of who you're designing for, because who is it for if not for the actual people you want to help? Then developing your idea and thinking about the details of how your user is going to be experiencing it, and up to like the final point where you have to communicate your unique selling point of your idea through a presentation for Samsung, or in general, this is a life skill too. How do you communicate the story you're trying to tell with this beautiful idea that you've come up with? And apart from the monthly workshops, I'm also going to be in the channel to chat with everyone and even have one-to-one mentoring sessions upon request with anyone that might want to, and just hang out on Discord, inspire, and see what everyone is thinking and what everyone has like a burning desire to design for. Yeah.
That sounds so good. Yeah, so definitely check out all of the links in the Discord, and hit up Andriana if you're looking for some mentoring as well. Reuben, tell us about the Tech Lab.
Oh, the Tech Lab. Yeah, there's just so much more. Like, I can't wait to jump in on some of your critical labs. Like, I've worked with Andriana before, and the way she dissects ideas is absolutely an art form, man. So yeah, we got the Tech Lab running as well. It's weekly tutorials and advice on how to bring your ideas to life via tech. Like, it's the how. We've got these ideas, we see things that we want to change, but how do we bring those to life? And it's hosted by the incredible Alex Fafega, who's co-founder at design and technology studio Kamuzi, where he leads creative technology products for everyone from brands, governments, and organizations. And they also do a lot of passion projects, and they bring those learnings into the experience. So you can join Alex for the first live Tech Lab session on the 28th of July at 5:30 p.m. And as per usual, if you stay in touch via the Discord community, you guys will be the first to know.
Cool. So, just a quick note as well. Before the Q&A starts, we're about to bring our guests back on for the Q&A. We urge you to take note of your questions and the ones that are really interesting to you. If you can leave tonight with at least 3 important questions, then that's all you need as a brief to kickstart your project and to submit for Soul for Tomorrow, along with support from Andriana on Discord. It is the final part of the evening now, the Q&A with our experts and our Samsung ambassador. So I'd love to welcome back George, Dominique, Joycelyn, and Dwayne.
Don't be shy. Taz won't bite.
We're just live. We're just streaming live. It's fine.
Taz won't bite.
I'd be surprised if I got that right.
It's all good. Thank you so much. Welcome back. Welcome back. So this is the last part of the evening. We have a little bit of time to kind of unpack some of the things that we've learned. I know from some of the conversations I've had backstage with some of you, it's been really organic. Everyone's sort of saying, wow, I've learned so much from the other speakers, which is a really beautiful thing to see. All right, my first question. I feel like we might have answered some of this already, but I'm curious to know how we can sum it up. What lessons can we take as humans from nature itself? And this is open to anyone, by the way.
If no one minds tonight, I'll jump in here. So I think we like to separate ourselves from nature, and we are a product of nature. And the same way nature has evolved to solve the immediate problems, we can solve the problems ourselves as well. An example of that is, on a hot day, we sweat. On a cold day, we have internal heating. We warm up, we burn energy, and we create heat. When we are tired, we sense it. I think if we take that and we look at nature on the whole, we can see that the planet is doing all the things that our own individual, unique bodies would do if it was under stress. So maybe the lessons that we can take is the things that you feel every day, the environment that we live in is experiencing something similar, and it's telling you that every single day.
Oh, wow. So we should apply like the self-awareness on our own bodies into the environment to hear it speak and know what's wrong and what's happening. That's made me feel really guilty all of a sudden. I'm just like, the earth is in pain and it's partly my fault.
Do you know what? But the change starts there, though, doesn't it?
No,
It's always with
100%.
something uncomfortable. We're like, oh, wow, we've been doing that. Let's go and sort it out. So don't worry, I'm here to support you.
Yeah,
I'm here
climate
now.
anxiety just set in for me.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. You don't know, I've got a lot of friends who are teaching me about the importance of nature and how to stay connected. And there was a book, I don't know, one of you guys might know it, but it's something to do about with how trees speak to each other.
Yeah.
Just
Yes.
come- What's it called?
World Wide Web.
What's it called, sorry?
Wood Wide Web?
Worldwide.
Wood Wide Web.
Is it Wood Wide Web?
Wood Wide Web.
Okay, I thought it was something along the intelligence of trees or something
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. I don't know.
Or the hidden
Might be the
hidden
subtitle.
life of trees.
Yeah, it's the
that
hidden life of trees and how they actually support each other via the roots and actually check in with each
Yeah.
other.
Just incredible. Like
Yeah.
you can just see that connection in nature as well, which a lot of us didn't know about before. And I've been reading a lot more about it as well, and it's just absolutely incredible. And again, just shows how we are just nature, like defending itself, like as Dwayne mentioned as well. And it's just like it's so intrinsic to us, like nature, and we're really just a part of that. And I think the more we connect with that, and the more we see that, the more we can like really push to protect it as well.
Yeah, no doubt. I know, Andriana, you probably got some questions. I'm going to throw a question to George, and then we'll come back with one from you. George, quick question. Firstly, yeah, just so much going on, man. We got a question from the Discord community. It's a food-based question, so I've gone with you. And I don't know if you can answer it, but I'll throw it at you. Does being vegan, I don't know if you are vegan. You're not,
No,
okay.
no.
But let's have a collective go then at answering this.
No
Does
problem.
being vegan hold a certain type of privilege with it? And what is most important as habits in the way that we eat? So maybe the question is more, what is the most important habit we can make to become better eaters?
I mean, so I'm veggie, but I definitely flex from time to time. My issue is
Flexitarian.
more is more with the kind of welfare of the animals, and I love my dog, and like I can't see any difference between Waldo and a cow or a pig or whatever, so I don't understand. Like, I definitely wouldn't eat him, so why is it all right to eat them?
Big up Waldo.
Big up Waldo.
Yeah.
And like, interestingly, so my business partner in Wild Farmed, Andy, had been a vegetarian, very strict vegetarian for 25 years. When he started farming, he's ostensibly, well, he started off as a wheat farmer, but he realised you can't farm properly unless you're using animals. And in fact, this whole thing of having farms working in different silos, so like this thing of, oh, we're a dairy farm, we're a beef farm, we're a wheat farm, that's not real. And that's something we've made up in the last 100 years or so. It was always the case that you would have plants and animals living in symbiosis, and you do a bit of everything. And so he now, after 25 years, he eats meat. He only eats his meat, but he eats meat because he understands that they're absolutely fundamental to the process.
Like a whole ecosystem that needs to be in place for it to be successful.
That's just also a nod to inclusion, which is something we talk about on these projects. So yeah, no doubt. Andriana, I saw you literally touching and being connected to nature there, stroking your plant.
Does your plant have a name? Is it like fern, like Finny the Fern, or no? Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't have a name yet.
Yet. Okay. I like the yet. Okay.
I haven't identified the Latin name of it, but plants are friends, so they need actual sentimental names to be involved in life. Can I go for a question?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is more of it might sound a bit business side, but I think it's very important. So when we talk about sustainability, it seems like a lot of designers, a lot of people that are trying to tackle it borrow from indigenous methods. And all these methods have a very slow approach in understanding what the land needs and what the people around it need in order to work in its full potential. And the question is, what are some ways that we can suggest for big corporations to slow down in order to leave for that space to see what organically is needed in the ecosystem that we live in right now? And is there a space at the point in time we're at in life right now to change the business model, but still keep thriving as a big corporation?
Is that generally out to the floor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I'd like to speak on this one. I guess I'm a bit opinionated on this, working in the tech space where lots of big tech companies operate. And indigenous cultures are not products, and they are very specific to each indigenous group. I think we use indigenous as a monolith for just ethnic people around the world, and there are indigenous peoples living in so many different places around the world. So that's one thing. And I think a huge issue that we see out of tech, and we see in design as well, is that we like to commodify things. We like to make things sort of digestible and consumable. So we go, okay, this indigenous community does this, and we'll make it into a product or make it into something that we can profit off of. But that's just not how those practices were built. And so I think that some of the important questions that need to be asked are, when are corporations taking up space where it's not about reform, it's not about working in a better way, it's just about you need to leave this environment in order to actually let it flourish. And I think that a really good analogy for that is rewilding. So places where the land has been intensively farmed, and you can say, okay, we'll use natural fertilizer instead, and try all these different things. But really, I have a friend who runs Allside Farm, which is an organic farm, and they've left so much of it to just go to its own devices. And it has just brought back so much beauty, so much biodiversity. They're seeing insects that haven't been there for years. And I think that we need to apply that to the business case, because it's just not every environment that a corporation needs to be in. And we're blurring the lines a lot between stewardship, corporation, business, finance. And I think we need to reckon with the fact that capital profit is a huge part of environmental degradation. And so you can't always dismantle some of these issues with the same tools that built them.
Yeah. I mean, if if we don't have a planet to make money on, we'll be in trouble, right? So it kind of makes sense. Should we go for one more question, Reuben, before we wrap up?
Yeah. I've got a great one from Discord, so big up whoever dropped this. Over the last year, I feel many of us have been appreciating our outdoor spaces, and we've all been holidaying closer to home. But now as the world begins to open up once more, how can we continue to explore our planet whilst traveling consciously? Great question, by the way. And anyone can answer this.
This sounds like it was tailor-made for me. How can we explore our planet? In short, it's about just, look, adventure, exploration, and climate can go hand in hand. They're three corners, I think, of the same triangle. And when I sat down with my teammate Phoebe Smith and I said, look, let's work out what we can do to get the next generation exploring, enjoying, and protecting the environment, we looked at it and said, well, look, we can do it. Make them pay for every single trip. It's not about planting flags, it's about planting seeds. That's our motto. It's about paying for every single trip, not in terms of a monetary value, like I said, but in terms of paying for the carbon that trip's going to produce. It's about doing something locally, not just for yourself, but for your community that they can look to and say, actually, I just learned something new. I want to go and do a little bit of, I don't know, reducing my carbon footprint. I want to plant a tree. I want to rewild the area. I want to clear a meadow. I want to clean up a waterway. All of these small little things, they go towards paying for your expedition, paying for your adventure, paying for your holiday. I think we need to get away from thinking about payment just being in terms of sterling or dollars or whatever, and just start thinking about what we're giving back as opposed to what we're taking and then offsetting by paying, some duty on an airline flight.
Yeah, I had a conversation the other day around having like a coinless society, like a moneyless society, and it takes me to that conversation to something you just said, Dwayne, as well, and thinking about like bartering and trading. Like, I'll help you with X, you can have 2 mangoes that I've got, and so on. Like, take it back to how it was. So a lot of food for thought on that one. Anyone else have any?
I think I just have something to say on that, having travelled quite a lot with not a lot of money at all, and wanting to make the right decisions. And I think that we have got so used to things being really cheap and really accessible.
Yeah.
And of course, there are conversations about access and about discrimination within those spaces. But importantly, a flight should not cost you £15. That just shouldn't happen. And I think we need to rethink how we travel and why we are traveling and have purposeful travel. If anyone wants some more advice on this, I've done a lot of work with Trippin, which is a new age travel brand, and they are talking a lot about purposeful travel in this. But looking at using trains, looking at using buses, looking at exploring different areas that you wouldn't normally go to. Of course, if you're doing long haul flights, you can't get there in many other ways than a plane. But making the right decision every time you travel and making sure that you're traveling with purpose, I think, is a really important part, and not just taking for granted these sort of cheap tickets that kind of blown around in our face.
Yeah, and also, can I quickly add in
Of course.
Yeah, and also I think what I've discovered a lot more lately as well is also just exploring, and also what's been discussion today as well, just exploring the areas like close to you as well, and exploring, I don't know, like beautiful places around the UK, for example, that a lot of people either take for granted or don't really know that they're there or don't really go into them. And I've just started making a list of all the beautiful woodlands and everything all around that I want to visit. And, also taking that in, that there are amazing places you can visit that are more close to you that you might not know about, and that might actually bring you, build a more stronger connection there as well. And when you're traveling, thinking about how you're traveling, and, for example, doing things like interrailing or railing to somewhere, for example, instead of flying, could actually be an incredible experience, because you get to visit these places, and a lot of people don't stop and see through the places that they're going to. So just thinking about all of those things.
Reuben, Andriana, you up for a road trip? I'm feeling inspired. I'm not going to lie.
I was going to say as well, you said you've made a list.
Yeah.
Do you mind emailing me the list? I'd honestly, and we can share it on the Discord community.
Yeah.
Maybe we can meet up at places. I don't know.
I'm
let's
happy
do
to,
Yeah, that'll be nice.
Yeah. let's do it.
Okay, we're kind of coming to an end now of this month's session. So, Andriana, I'm going to let you start our wrap up. Sadly,
First of all, I just have to say that this conversation is so grounding. I love how you can just sit around and speak about ways to treat the planet in a better way, and move more intentionally with it. But thank you everyone for tuning in this evening. Thank you to our experts. This was amazing. Thank you for sharing your knowledge on this Solve for Tomorrow Future Talks journey and helping us start to answer the question of how can we start designing for a more sustainable future.
Yeah, I think as mentors as well, just sitting in and listening to you guys, there's a lot floating around in my head. So I'm going to ask both of you, and you guys can ask me as well. Like, if there's one gem that you got from today, what would it be?
That I don't necessarily, for me as well, like a personal takeaway, I don't necessarily have to be fully embedded into climate activist groups in order to make a change to the planet. Because I think that was a big thing for me. Like, if I don't belong to the community, can I still make change? So for me, I'm like, I still have power and influence, even in my little bubble. Even if I just have a conversation with my dad about it, that's what I'm taking away from today's conversation. What about you?
Yeah, I think mine is just to be constantly more curious about the natural world and how I'm like in connection with it. Whether that's in transit, whether that's plants and trees around my area, whatnot, just to feel a bit more connected so I'd actually start to care a little bit more and really start taking preservation of that a lot more seriously. Andriana, what did you get?
Bouncing off what you just said, like the relationship we have with each action we just do on autopilot mode to like strip it back and be like, okay, what's my intention with this? I'm really stuck still with what George said at the beginning, that the one thing you can do to be more sustainable, you have 3 chances every day, and it's every time you have a meal. And the farming that you choose to support, that's beautiful because there's so many people behind that. And there's so many choices, design choices, production choices that come with those farms, that I think that created like a little bit of a shift for me in terms of what kind of what I support on my plate now.
Thanks so much, Andriana. Yeah, hit us with the Discord. What's happening over in the Discord community? Is it going to stay open?
Yeah, I mean, it's always open for people to jump in and have a conversation to see where everyone's at with their projects. It's the hub to connect and support the ideation journey over the next few months, to turn everyone's ideas into reality, to submit for the competition. And you've got 3 mentors there, and we're going to be the resources for you. So take advantage of it. We're going to be there.
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks for holding down the fort on Discord as well, and beaming in live from Cyprus. Like, we really appreciate you, Andriana.
Thanks, Andriana.
Also, Solve for Tomorrow On Demand is a free online accredited course launching on FutureLearn very soon, and details on how to pre-register will appear on your screen once we've said our goodbyes and our peace outs, which is happening in about T-minus a minute and a half.
Thanks, Reuben. Huge thank you to our experts and our ambassador for tonight. It's been so thought-provoking to listen to all of your stories and insights as well. On that note, our next live event will be on the 7th of September, and we'll be focusing on what is my bread and butter, diversity and inclusion. So I'm so excited. Stay in touch with us on Discord to be the first to hear about upcoming events and workshops. We'll see you very soon, but that is always good night from us.
Take care.